The neon sign outside the Wayfarer diner flickered between blue and green as Elias Harper pushed the door open with his shoulder, balancing a tired 4-year-old on one arm and a small travel bag on the other. Life on the fringe colonies was never easy, but being a single father made it feel like every day was a test he had not studied for. The diner was warm, humming softly with alien languages and the clink of utensils, a rare refuge on a cold station orbiting a dying star. Elias slid into a booth near the viewport and helped his daughter Mara climb onto the seat, her eyes already drooping from exhaustion. That was when he noticed the waitress. She was tall and slender, her skin a soft silver blue that shimmered under the lights, her 4 fingers wrapped tightly around a data pad. She was shaking, not subtly, but enough that the liquid in the cups on her tray trembled dangerously. Elias frowned, not out of suspicion, but concern. When she reached their table, she tried to smile, but it cracked like thin glass. "Welcome to the Wayfarer," she said, her voice barely steady. Mara waved at her, smiling sleepily. The waitress froze for half a second too long, her pupils dilating, her breathing hitching. Elias noticed the way her free hand trembled near her side, as if she were bracing for something unseen. He ordered something simple, soup and warm bread, and a juice for Mara. As the waitress turned to leave, Elias spoke gently. "Hey," he said, keeping his tone calm, "are you all right?" She stiffened, then nodded too quickly. "Yes, human, sir," she replied. But she did not move. Elias sighed softly. "You don't look okay," he said, "and I've had enough bad days to recognize one." Her eyes flicked to Mara, then back to Elias, fear flashing across her alien features. In a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "They told me humans were cruel." Elias blinked, surprised by the honesty. "Who told you that?" he asked. "The Empire," she said quietly, glancing toward the kitchen doors. "They train us with stories." She swallowed, her throat rippling slightly. "They said humans enslave servers, that you take children for leverage, that kindness is a trick." Elias felt a familiar anger rise, not at her, but at the universe that kept painting his species as monsters. Mara leaned against him, already half asleep, clutching her stuffed fox. Elias adjusted her gently, then looked back at the waitress. "What's your name?" he asked. "Selari," she replied. "Well, Selari," he said softly, "I'm just here to get my kid fed and find a place to sleep." She stared at him as if he had spoken a forbidden truth. "But you're shaking," Elias continued. "That's not just fear, something else is wrong." Her grip on the data pad tightened until it creaked. "They implanted a compliance spine," she whispered. "If a customer complains, it activates." Elias felt his blood run cold. "And you think I'm going to complain?" he asked. "Yes," she said honestly, "all humans do, according to training." Mara stirred and murmured, "Daddy." Selari flinched violently, dropping the data pad. Elias stood up slowly, hands visible. "Hey," he said, "she's just dreaming." Selari's breathing was ragged now, tears forming at the edges of her eyes. "They said human children are taught cruelty early," she whispered. Mara opened her eyes and looked at Selari, then smiled and held out her stuffed fox. "For you," she said sleepily. The diner went silent. Selari stared at the toy like it was a weapon or a miracle. Her shaking grew worse. "No," she whispered, "this is not how it is supposed to be." Selari sank into the booth across from them without realizing it, her knees giving out. Elias slid the toy back into Mara's lap gently. "She just likes sharing," he said. Selari's hands were pressed flat against the table now, trying to ground herself. "The implant," she said, "it's confused." "What does that mean?" Elias asked. "It punishes disobedience," she said, "but it cannot find threat patterns." Elias clenched his jaw. "Who put it in you?" he asked. "The Dominion," she replied, They lease us to neutral stations. Mara yawned and rested her head on Elia's chest, already drifting back to sleep. Selari watched them like she was witnessing something sacred and forbidden. They said humans abandon their young, she whispered. Elias laughed softly, a tired sound. Some do, he admitted, but most of us would burn worlds for them. Selari's implant began to glow faintly beneath her skin, then dimmed. It stopped, she said in disbelief. What stopped? Elias asked. The pain, she said, tears finally spilling. It always hurts when fear spikes. Elias felt something settle into place in his chest, heavy and immovable. He looked around the diner and noticed how many alien eyes were watching now. He sat back down slowly, keeping Mara secure. No one is hurting her, he said firmly, not loudly, but with a weight that carried. A few patrons looked away, others leaned closer. Selari wiped her face. You are not what they said, she whispered. No, Elias replied, we're just tired people trying to survive. The food arrived, delivered by a nervous cook drone. Selari did not move to stand. Stay, Elias said gently, you look like you need a break. Selari hesitated, then nodded, curling her hands around a mug of heated nutrient broth. I was assigned here because humans pass through, she said. They wanted proof. Proof of what? Elias asked. That fear is justified, she replied. Mara slept soundly now, her breathing slow and steady. Elias watched Selari carefully. And now, he asked. Now the implant records everything, she said, touching her spine, including contradictions. Elias raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerous for them. Selari let out a shaky laugh. Yes, she said, it is. Around them, conversations slowly resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. You know, Elias said, back on Earth, we had waitresses who shook too. Why? Selari asked. Because life was hard, he said, not because they were weak. Selari's eyes glistened. They will come for me, she said quietly. Maybe, Elias replied, but not tonight. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folded transit permit, placing it on the table. This gets you to a free port, he said, no questions asked. Selari stared at it, stunned. Why would you help me? She asked. Elias looked down at Mara, then back at Selari. Because someday, he said, I want the galaxy to be kinder to her. The permit trembled in Selari's hands as she took it. I will remember this, she said. Good, Elias replied. Remember that we're not stories. When Elias and Mara finally stood to leave, Selari walked them to the door. The station lights reflected softly off her skin, no longer shaking. Will I see you again? She asked. Elias smiled faintly. Space is big, he said, but kindness travels. Mara stirred and waved one last time. Bye, she mumbled. Selari pressed a hand to her chest in an unfamiliar gesture she had learned moments ago. As the door slid shut behind the human and his child, the implant at Selari's spine pulsed once, then went dark forever. Somewhere in the data streams of the Dominion, 1,000 assumptions began to collapse. And on a forgotten station, orbiting a dying star, an alien waitress learned that the most dangerous thing a human could offer was compassion. The transit corridor beyond the Wayfarer diner was quieter than usual, the artificial gravity humming softly beneath Elias Harper's boots as he adjusted the strap of Mara's bag against his shoulder. Mara slept deeply now, her small body warm against his chest, unaware that the galaxy around her had shifted in a way no History Channel would ever record. Elias did not look back, but he could feel Selari's presence lingering behind the sealed diner doors like an echo that refused to fade. He had learned long ago that moments like that never ended cleanly. They simply waited to return in unexpected forms. As they reached the docking ring, Elias noticed the station lights flicker, once, then again. A low murmur spread among the travelers, a vibration felt more than heard. Elias slowed, instincts sharpening. Something was wrong. The public address system crackled to life in a dozen languages before settling on standard. "Attention all personnel," the synthetic voice announced. "Security Protocol Theta has been activated." Elias felt his jaw tighten. Theta was not for fires or depressurization, it was for containment. He shifted Mara slightly, shielding her face against his jacket. Around him, aliens of every shape and origin froze, some retreating into alcoves, others pressing themselves flat against the corridor walls. A squad of Dominion enforcers rounded the bend ahead, their armor angular and black, their visors glowing with cold amber light. Elias recognized the symbols instantly. They were not station security. They were hunters. "Remain where you are," one of them barked, their voice amplified and distorted. Elias stopped, slowly raising one hand. "I've got a sleeping kid," he said calmly. The enforcer's visor flickered as it scanned Mara. "Human juvenile detected," it replied, "no threat classification." Elias exhaled quietly. "Good," he said. The enforcers moved past him without another word, boots striking the deck in perfect unison. But they were heading in the wrong direction. Straight back toward the Wayfarer diner. Elias' stomach dropped. He stood there for a long moment after they vanished around the curve, debating with himself in the silence. Every instinct screamed to keep moving, to get on a ship and disappear into the vast anonymity of space. But another voice, quieter and heavier, refused to be ignored. He had seen fear like Celari's before. Not trained fear, not propaganda fear, but the kind that came from knowing pain intimately. Elias turned. Carefully, quietly, he retraced his steps, staying close to the shadows of the station's structural ribs. The nearer he got to the diner, the more tense the air felt, like the moment before a storm broke. He heard shouting now, alien voices raised in panic. Then a sound that made his blood run cold. A scream cut short. Elias broke into a run. Inside the Wayfarer diner, chaos had replaced warmth. Tables were overturned, patrons pressed against walls, the cook drone lay shattered in a corner. At the center of it all stood Celari, restrained by a pulsing energy field, her silver-blue skin streaked with tears, her spine implant glowing violently beneath the surface. Two enforcers stood close, another recording with a hovering drone. "Subject exhibits non-compliant empathy," one enforcer stated. "Evidence confirms contamination by human behavioral patterns," another replied. Celari's body shook harder than before, not from fear alone, but from pain. Elias stepped forward without thinking. "Let her go," he said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Every visor snapped toward him. "Civilian human," the lead enforcer said, "you are interfering with a Dominion operation." Elias positioned himself between Celari and the enforcers, shielding her with his body despite the energy field. "She's a waitress," he said, "not a weapon." "She is compromised," the enforcer replied. "Her implant has logged contradictory data." Elias laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Yeah," he said, "that's called reality." The recording drone zoomed closer, focusing on his face. "Identify yourself," the enforcer demanded. "Elias Harper," he said, "single father, freight pilot, nobody important." The enforcer paused, processing. "Your interaction triggered subject deviation," it stated. "Good," Elias replied, "maybe she learned something." Celari looked at him through the haze of pain, disbelief written across her features. "You came back," she whispered. "Of course I did," Elias said quietly. "I said not tonight." The enforcer raised an arm, the weapon mounted there beginning to glow. "Step aside," it ordered. Elias did not move. Mara stirred against his chest, waking just enough to whimper. The sound froze the room. The enforcer's visor flickered again as it scanned the child, recalculating threat matrices that had no category for this moment. Cellari's implant spasmed violently, then emitted a piercing tone. Error, it announced in a flat mechanical voice. The energy field around her faltered. Elias felt the shift instantly. Cellari, he said, run. She did not hesitate. As the field dropped, Cellari collapsed forward, Elias catching her instinctively as blaster fire scorched the air where she had been standing. The diner erupted into screams. Elias moved on reflex, flipping a table for cover as he shielded Cellari behind him, his body curled protectively around both her and Mara. Shots rang out, energy bolts slamming into metal and walls. Then something unexpected happened. The station lights surged. A deafening crack echoed as the ceiling above the enforcers burst open, releasing a cascade of sparks and debris. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, separating the diner from the rest of the station. An unfamiliar voice boomed through the room. Dominion units, stand down, it commanded. The enforcers hesitated. A new group emerged through the smoke, station defenders bearing the insignia of the Freeport Coalition, weapons trained and ready. You have no jurisdiction here, the defender leader said coldly. The enforcers assessed, calculated, then slowly lowered their weapons. This incident will be reported, one said. Make sure you report it accurately, the defender replied. The Dominion units withdrew, disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of damaged systems and Cellari's uneven breathing. Elias sat back against the floor, exhaustion crashing into him like a wave. Cellari clutched his sleeve, her hands no longer shaking, but gripping with desperate strength. It broke, she said softly, or in her voice, the implant broke. Elias looked at the faint scorch along her spine, now dark and inert. Good, he said, you deserved better. Mara peeked out from his jacket, eyes wide. Daddy, she whispered, is she okay? Cellari laughed weakly through tears. Yes, she said, because of you. Station medics rushed in, followed by coalition officials, questions flying in every direction. Elias answered none of them. He simply stood when it was time, adjusting Mara's bag once more. Cellari walked beside him, no restraints, no trembling, just quiet determination. At the docking ring, a small transport waited, engines warming. This ship, Elias said, handing Cellari the permit again, it's leaving now. Cellari hesitated only a moment before embracing him, awkward and unfamiliar, but sincere. You changed everything, she said. Elias shook his head. No, he replied, you did, I just listened. As Cellari boarded the transport, she looked back one last time at the human and his child. The galaxy would hunt her, question her, try to rewrite what she had experienced. But it was too late. She had seen the truth. And somewhere deep in the Dominion's vast network, a single corrupted data file continued to replicate, spreading a dangerous idea. That humans were not monsters. That fear could be unlearned. And that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could destabilize empires.